When I was growing up on the farm near Keensburg, Colorado, my grandma, Martha Mitzel, always raised a large organic garden. She used earthworms in her compost bed to create rich black soil. Her methods were very successful, and she gained some recognition and distinction and became affectionately known as the Worm Lady. In 1985, I interviewed Grandma at her home at age 75 and asked her to tell the story of her garden and worms. You've always had an organic garden of some kind. I suppose you started with your planting of gardens clear out of Kyoto.
Yes, I've always planted gardens, Kirk. When we first moved here to Keensburg when I was 17 years old, we lived over here by that house, close to the receiving station, and I planted a garden. But it wasn't until I got to planting organic garden was in 1955 reading an article.
In what?
In a Western magazine it was called, and it's not printed anymore. And it was a man in Florence, Colorado raising worms, and it was leaving this nice rich black soil, he said. So I pricked up my face and I drove up to Aunt Rosie and I showed it to her. We ought to go see this man. And when we liked some of this nice black rich soil in our gardens, I used to dig my radishes out with a screwdriver. The ground was hard if it was dry, and it was sticky when it was wet in the garden. And it's that way outdoors in the fields too, but it's not no fun to garden in it. So we made a trip to Florence, Colorado, and this man told us what he was doing. And he says they eat all the waste, these worms, red wigglers. And they leave this nice black rich soil. He says when he noticed this, he sprouted some oats for his chickens in the winter time and put it in there. They'd eat the green and then they'd eat the roots and they'd eat half of this black soil. So he also was feeding the chicken manure to the worms and the worm manure to the chickens. He says you can't lose when it makes a cycle like that. Recycle. So I started, and we had this insulage when we had to feed the cattle, and that was ideal. I mulched my whole yard with that.
The waste silage.
The waste silage, the black top of it that was
the spoil
that they were throwing away. And before that, I would rake everything up. The leaves and everything that came off of the garden was dried up and burnt. Now all of a sudden, I'm throwing back things into my yard. So somebody thought maybe I was like marbles. Grandpa used to have to a hired man help me rake it off or get rid of it. Now I want some of this insulage. So I asked him if next time they clean the silo off, they should bring a load of insulage into my yard up here in front so I could put a mulch on here to put some worms in it. So a week went by and 2 weeks went by. I said, didn't they clean the silo off yet? Yes, he said, they dumped it in the corral. I said, well, I want it up here. Maybe early in the spring of the year. I says, I don't want to have to go to the neighbors and ask them for their own insulage. So they brought another load over and dumped it when they cleaned the silo off. They said, do you have enough now? And I says, no, better bring another load. And I heard them say to each other, let's snore under, we'll bring her a big load this time.
The hired man.
The hired man did. So that was great, Kirk. I used that and the worms. And as long as I had the insulage, it's better than now that I don't have the insulage. Because there was less weeds. Now I have to fight the weeds because I pump water out of the bark pit.
Yeah.
But I still use everything that I have that's waste. If molded hay or rotten straw, I put it on the worm bed and they will eat it all up and leave this nice black rich soil.
So you started out with a hard clay, sticky soil, and now you don't even have to till it.
Don't have to tell.
You want to plant your garden in the spring? What do?
I just make my little ditch and plant and
Cover it up?
cover it up. Make my ditch where I irrigate with a hoe, and it can be worked anytime. It's nice, black, rich soil.
And you kind of gained some fame as the worm lady.
Is that right?
Well, in newspaper articles and
Yes.
things like that.
I told that to a man once at one of these beat meetings that we had, and he had a sister that was the women's editor in the Denver Post. And when we was at this meeting, we was out there for a barbecue supper. The beat girls were meeting, and he was there as the newspaper man, or whatever you call him. And he says, well, he thinks the farmers are ruining their ground. That's how we got to this. So I let him talk. He says they put this on the ground, and that's no good, and they put this on, and all these chemicals, and I let him talk. When he got done talking, I told him what I do in my yard.
When was
And
this?
he perked up. This was back when Kirk, it would have been about 1970, fall of 1968, 9. And then this was in the spring then when she came out. So he told his sister that she ought to get a write-up about this. So she called me up one day and kept me on the phone a half an hour. And she says, what do you do? What are you doing? Well, I do this, and I have this nice black rich soil. And then she finally said, well, could I make an appointment to come out there once and bring a photographer along and write an article? Oh, I says, do you think that's interesting enough to write an article on it? I just thought she wanted to have this information for her own self, the way she was asking questions. So then one day she called me up and came out, and they took these pictures and put an article in the paper, and then I was famous.
The famous worm lady.